Have you ever gotten a phone call from a friend or a colleague, somebody you haven't talked to in a long time, and they ask you about how things are going, and my God, you feel so good because you haven't talked to them in such a long time, and you're going through all sorts of pleasantries, and you're talking all sorts of things, you're catching up on family and things, and then they say, hey, by the way, and then you realize, my God, they called to ask you for a favor. Now, this has happened to all of us, and we might have done it ourselves. I'm going to tell you the long and short about how this should be done. I'm Gulraj Singh Shahpuri. I'm a business coach and I'm a leadership consultant, and I advise a lot of companies on many things, including charismatic leadership. And one of the ways that leaders like you and me, how we should ask people for a favor when we're catching up to long-lost friends or old business colleagues, it has to be done charismatically, and I'm going to teach you the few steps on how to do this. Here's the first step. Open with your true intentions. As soon as you call that person and you've said hello, hi, tell them, hey, by the way, I'm calling to ask for a favor. You want to be congruent with the truth right from the get-go, because when you reveal your true intentions later on, it looks so insincere that all the pleasantries that you did, they're going to say, my God, that didn't mean anything because this person was just going to ask me for a favor. Now, if somebody did this to you, of course, you'd still be polite. You wouldn't say, hey, why you do? You'd just come across and be as polite and say, oh, of course, but you're going to feel bad. Just like if you've ever done it to somebody, they feel bad, but nobody's ever going to let you know that they have felt bad about this. So step number one is open right away with your intentions. Step number two, of course, do all the pleasantries and the formalities, but do not oversteer. You don't want to go overboard on something just because you've already said, hey, I'm going to ask you for a favor, and now you're creating an obligation by being so nice. You don't want to do this. Do it like you normally would, because otherwise people can call you out on it. They'll sense it, but of course they're never going to say it to you, right? Number three is, after you've done the pleasantries and you've asked them and you've caught up about things, say, oh, by the way, back to what I had called you about, and I'm so sorry we don't talk often enough and I feel really awkward just calling you out of the blue about this. So you've actually established that, look, I didn't want to burden you about this because you know what, people have better things to do. But you know, because you're a good person and they're a good person, of course these things are okay with each other. Now ask for the favor, be direct and straightforward about it. Surprisingly, people do not expect anything in return right away. You might think that, hey, just because I've asked for a favor, that means I have to return this favor right away. Nobody's like that. Everybody knows you're going to get around to it. You might never return the favor, but everybody likes to be helpful. Everybody loves to be a problem solver. They're going to be happy that you called, and they're going to be happy that you remembered them to ask for the favor. So that's already pretty good. And lastly, you want to thank them profoundly and sincerely about how things are, and say some nice pleasantries while signing off that, oh my God, it was so wonderful catching up to you. And don't say things that are so obvious like, hey, we must catch up sometime or we must meet. You know what? People know that those mean nothing. They know that those are just social formalities to say it doesn't look sincere, it doesn't look genuine. Say something like, hey, I'm not going to say we must meet up soon because everybody says that. I want to meet you. I'm going to come over one of these days and I'm going to give you a call. Next time when I call, I'm going to ask you to open up your calendar and I'm going to love to drop in for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with you. So to summarize it, be sincere from the get-go. Tell them why you're calling. Then and only then get into those pleasantries and the formalities. Then ask for the favor and close the call genuinely and sincerely. So here's what I want you to do now. Of course, do this the next time you ever speak to anybody for a favor. Secondly, don't think that they want something in return. People aren't like that. Thirdly, I want you to think of a mental list, or maybe just write it out on paper. If you've done this to somebody in the recent past or maybe even in the last year, I want you to just give them a call and say, last time I called you for a favor, this time I'm just calling you to say hi. Hey friend, how are you doing? Or you might want to apologize to somebody that you've done this to, because you know what, even though they were polite about it, they must have felt bad, just like you feel bad when people do this to you. So give somebody a call and say, I'm so sorry last time I called you and I didn't straight away tell you I was calling you for a favor, but I'm so sorry next time. But hey, how are things this time and how is everybody? And when you put down the phone, they're going to be glad you called.